Hi, everybody. Please help me keep Greyhawk alive by liking this video and subscribing. It really does help. You can also become a member of the channel or support me on Patreon and get early access to my videos, exclusive content, free or at-cost copies of my Greyheim Adventures modules, and more. Thanks, and enjoy the show. Castle Greyhawk has a long and fascinating history, and I want to talk about it today on Greyhawk Ruins. So there is a lot of history behind Castle Greyhawk, and I wanted to kind of get some of it down before it gets lost to the hoary mists of time. It's nice to always refresh ourselves on this. Castle Greyhawk was, of course, one of the two first earliest dungeon campaigns in Dungeons and Dragons. The other being Dave Arneson's Castle Blackmore. The story goes that Gary, having seen how Dave ran his game, immediately wanted to make his own dungeon and wrote the one-level dungeon and ran his kids through it. And they loved it so much that they, had to get more. And eventually, he had a 13-level Castle Greyhawk dungeon that he ran as his own campaign. This is where the earliest campaign was, where we get to see a lot of the classic characters, Melf and those characters are all in there. And eventually, Rob Kuntz, who ran Robilar, Lord Robilar, made it to the bottom of the dungeon and uh, was sent on a slide to their version of China through the earth and essentially won the dungeon. And the next day or two, a couple other players did manage the same feat and were also whisked away to China. Um, and that's when Rob Kuntz was brought on as the co-DM of the campaign. And what they did then was they took a step back and they rewrote the entire dungeon, bringing in elements from Rob's dungeons and taking stuff from the original 13 level Castle Greyhawk and making something that was essentially more than 30 levels big. And that became the main dungeon that you see a lot of the um, uh, in the heyday of Gary's home campaign. That's what it was this 30 plus level dungeon with a bunch of players, going in it all the time. Now, after that, um, when after Gary was removed from TSR, um, he kind of he made a 6 level dungeon that was strictly for conventions, and it was kind of a stripped down version of the dungeon, and he would run that at conventions when he was running anything Greyhawk related, and TSR, on the other hand, now had the rights to publish Castle Greyhawk. So they did, and they produced this monstrosity. This is WG7 Castle Greyhawk. This is a joke module. This was deliberately intended as an insult to Gary, and it's silly. It's nonsensical. The dungeon levels themselves are actually not, well, some of the dungeon levels themselves are actually not too awful and could theoretically be incorporated into a mega dungeon. If you wanted to have your own version of Castle Greyhawk, you could use a couple of these levels. I certainly some of them are just too far gone and too far irredeemable there, but they have sly mentions of people like Gary and other figures are sort of put in there as anagrams and stuff like that. It's very disrespectful, and it was intentionally so. At least that was Gary's assumption, and I think a lot of the fans agreed with it. And a few years later, in the 2E era, uh, TSR took another bite at the apple and came out with Greyhawk Ruins, which is a much, much better, much more serious attempt to cover the material. It is not yet all based in Gary's original dungeon. That is very clear. It's missing all of most of the central features. The geography of the castle itself is all wrong. The three towers and stuff. That's all an invention for this module by Blake Mobley and Timothy Brown. This is actually I like this more and more as time wears on. I didn't much care for it at the time, but it's actually not a bad module at all, and can certainly be used. And it is, of course, the canonical Castle Greyhawk in TSR in Wizards of the Coast's version of Greyhawk. So this is the Castle Greyhawk. And with it, we also have this, which is Expedition to the Ruins of Greyhawk. This is written by Jason Volman, James Jacob, and Eric Mona, who a lot of you will know from Greyhawk fandom as one of the outstanding stalwarts, and he's also now the publisher of Paizo Games. And this kind of builds on what was in Greyhawk Ruins. It adds some very cool connections to the broader campaign. It's really a well done thing. It gives you this beautiful graded map of the city and so forth. A lot of great stuff in here. That it's still obviously based on Greyhawk Ruins, so it still uses that 3-tower structure. But and it ends up with the castle kind of, and this actually has a plot. Where Igwil, the Witch Queen, is doing stuff, and you gotta do stuff with that. And it ends, spoilers, it ends with the castle disappearing and reappearing in all sorts of different places across the multiverse. So this is how you can bring Castle Greyhawk into any campaign setting. I think if you ignore that part, but if you're running Greyhawk Ruins, you get this. It is a worthy addition, and even if you don't use the plot that's contained in here, it has a lot of cool details like the God Trap and all that good stuff. Now, alongside that, Gary was still producing stuff. He was working with Troll Lord Games, and they produced this box set of Castle Zagyg, The Upper Works. And this is a very cool, this was supposed to be the start of a whole series of box sets that would provide the definitive Gary's version of the published Castle Greyhawk. Only the first box set, The Upper Works, was published. There's also some stuff for the setting around at Yigsburg, but I'm focused here on the castle itself. And this is, it's fantastic. It's not written by Gary. At least the vast majority of it is written by other people. But he was the editor, and he had a very heavy editorial hand, and it's very obvious when you read it. The text reads like something that he would write. But a lot of great people contributed to this. But it still feels like Gary's work. And he apparently, from what I know from back in the day, he would rewrite entire passages of text, and he had a very heavy hand. So he was involved with every little jot and tittle that went into this. Now, the good news is, as we just learned, that Troll Lord Games got permission from the estate of Gary Gygax to continue, to republish what they had done and then continue the work forward. They just released a trailer for that, I think, last week, and there's going to be 17 levels in this version of the campaign of the castle. So we've got we've got a whole bunch of different things, and of course we have my own effort, the Castle Mad Archmage, which I wrote before Castle Zagyg. Well, right after Castle Zagyg, and level 2 of my dungeon coincidentally fits in with where they left off with the Upper Works. So if you had the Upper Works, you could use Castle Man Archmage to continue it down. But that's, now Castle Man Archmage is its own thing, and it's kind of taking a life of its own. But in terms of the published stuff by TSR, WotC, and Troll Lord Games, we have a whole bunch of really good stuff out there, and you can. Personally, I'm biased. I like Castle Man Archmage, but when Troll Lord Games continues with the Castle Zagyg stuff, I will absolutely be buying it, and I will probably be running it straight out of the box. It's going to be written for Castles and Crusades, which is very 1E friendly. So there we have it, a quick and dirty publication history of Castle Greyhawk and its ruins. Do let me know what you think in the comments, and a reminder to all, channel members and Patreon supporters are now getting access to supporter-only videos, which is something new I'm experimenting with. So if you want to see that new material, please support the channel in the way that you prefer. Hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will talk to you all later.
Thanks for watching today's video. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Below you'll find links to my Patreon, which helps make these videos possible. You'll also find the web store where you can buy my books, and my blog where you'll find all sorts of free downloads and other articles. Thanks, and have a great day.